The secret harvest asterisk. No one knew why aliens came to Earth with smiles. Not weapons. They didn't destroy cities or demand surrender. Instead, they made quiet deals with world leaders. And within weeks, strange buildings rose in the middle of forests. Deserts and islands hidden from public eyes. People were told they were science centers or research stations, but inside those buildings, something else was happening. Something the world wasn't ready to know. Jacob Thorne was just another young man from a small town. He had no job, no future, and barely enough money for food. So when he saw an ad that promised good pay for health donations, he signed up without a second thought. A clean room, friendly staff, and no needles at first, only a small scan. Of his body, they ask strange questions. Do you form emotional connections easily? Do you feel protective toward others? Do you respond strongly to touch? Jacob laughed it off, answered honestly, and walked out with a smile and a promise of $500 the next day. But that night, everything changed. He woke up in a soft, glowing room. The walls shimmered like water. The air smelled like sweet flowers. And he was completely naked. Panic rushed through him as he jumped to his feet. There were no windows, no doors, just smooth curves and floating lights. Then a voice spoke from above, gentle but not human. Subject 117. Emotionally receptive. High purity levels. Excellent base for nectar generation. Jacob froze. What did that mean? Where was he? He shouted. Hey, let me out. Moments later, the wall shifted open like melted glass. And in walked something he couldn't believe was real. She was tall, with lavender skin, glowing silver eyes, and soft, curved horns on her head. Her long robe shimmered with stars. And her voice echoed gently. Welcome, human Jacob. You are now in the care of House Vasari. I'm not supposed to be here, Jacob said, stepping back. There's been a mistake, but the alien woman only smiled. There's no mistake. You have been selected for a sacred duty. He was taken through a corridor filled with sounds, whispers, soft music, distant moans, behind glass panels. Jacob saw others like him, human males, lying on strange beds. Some laughing, some dazed. Aliens sat beside them, feeding them glowing fruits, stroking their hair, and collecting something from small tubes attached to their necks or backs. One of them saw Jacob, pressed his hand to the glass, and mouthed, "Run." Jacob was placed into a private chamber with cushions, warm lights, and a hovering table with unfamiliar food. The alien woman introduced herself as Lissa, a nectar tender. She explained everything in a calm, soft tone, to calm for what she was saying. Human males produced a rare biochemical called nectar when they experienced deep emotional or romantic connection. To aliens, especially wealthy and powerful females, this nectar was more valuable than gold. It enhanced their minds, restored youth, and even increased fertility. And Earth's leaders had made a trade technology in exchange for men. You have something no other species can make, Lissa said. Your kind is uniquely precious. Jacob felt like the ground was shaking. You mean, I'm being farmed? Like a cow? He asked, his voice cracking. Lissa tilted her head gently. Not farmed, cared for, cherished, and rewarded for your gift. But I didn't agree to this. He snapped. I was tricked. Consent is encouraged, she said, but not required. Jacob tried to fight, tried to run, but the room had no exit he could access. Every time he grew too angry. Soft gas filled the chamber, making him tired and warm. They fed him sweet fruits, played calming music, and brought in beautiful alien women who treated him like a prince. And the more he relaxed, the more his body responded. The machines around him blinked faster, glowing brighter. He understood now his body was the product, and his emotions were the factory. Days passed, or maybe weeks, he couldn't tell. His resistance began to fade. His questions stopped. And he almost forgot what freedom felt like. But one night, when the chamber lights dimmed and Lissa left him alone, he found a small crack in the wall behind his bed. Inside, it was a scrap of cloth, torn and stained. With words written in human ink, they take your soul piece by piece. Don't give them everything. Jacob's heart raced. Someone had been here before him. Someone who tried to resist. He stood up, stared at the glowing ceiling, and whispered to himself, "I'm not a bottle, and they don't get to drink me dry." From that moment, something inside him changed. He smiled the next day, acted more gentle, more charming, but deep in his eyes, a storm was growing. He would play there. Game for now. But he wasn't staying. He was going to escape and take others with him. The harvest would end. Starting with him, the alien market. Jacob stood at the edge of a balcony made from crystal and starlight. Below him stretched a market unlike anything. On Earth, alien ships floated in the air like giant fish, tethered by beams of energy. Tents made of glowing silk rippled in the windless space, and everywhere, alien females walked in elegant robes. Tails swaying, jewelry humming with energy. They weren't shopping for weapons or clothes, they were buying humans. A loud horn echoed through the sky dome, and a platform rose at the center of the market. A young human male, dressed in golden fabric, was led onto the stage. His eyes were dull, his arms thin, but his face wore a forced smile. Beside him stood a tall alien with orange skin and sharp feathers across her shoulders. She held up a small vial filled with glowing pink liquid. Nectar purity, 93%. She announced proudly. The crowd gasped. Then the bidding began. Crystals, planets, and even starships were offered in exchange for the boy. Jacob clenched his fists. He wasn't watching a show. He was watching a slave auction, and they called it commerce. Lissa appeared beside him. Calm as ever. "This market is one of the highest-ranking nectar hubs in the galaxy," she said, her voice almost dreamy. "Your value is rising." "Quickly, Jacob, I've already received 5 offers for your first bonding." Jacob didn't reply. He watched as the winning alien woman, Empress with golden claws, stepped onto the stage and kissed the boy on the forehead. He trembled in her arms as she wrapped her tail around him and led him away. Not a word spoken, not a goodbye. "I want to know everything," Jacob said finally. "About this place, the trade, and who runs it." Lissa smiled and gestured for him to follow. They walked through a hallway made of living vines that lit up as they passed. Each door they passed had a symbol and a scent, each one representing a buyer's clan. "Every house wants nectar for different reasons," Lissa explained. "Some use it for healing, others for fertility, and a few," she paused, "for control." "What happens if I refuse to give nectar?" Jacob asked. Lissa paused before answering. "Refusal lowers your rank," she said carefully, "and lower ranked. Humans are sold to the black collectors." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "And who are they?" She looked away. "Buyers who don't care about consent, safety, or comfort." Jacob understood the threat. He was either a prince in a velvet cage or meat in a cold one. He needed to rise in value, but only long enough to make his move later. He was taken to a garden where wealthy alien bidders were waiting, each one more beautiful and terrifying than the last. There was a warrior queen with glowing tattoos that moved on her skin, a four-eyed judge from a planet of silence, and a pale priestess whose long arms never stopped shaking. All of them looked at Jacob like he was a treasure they needed to possess. But one gaze struck him differently. It came from a tall alien woman. With silver blue skin and sad eyes, she didn't speak, didn't bid, just watched him closely. Her name tag read, Thiva of the Broken House, before he could ask Lissa about her. A loud chime rang out. "The bidding for human male 117 begins now." The crowd leaned forward as the auction began. One by one, the aliens made offers. But Jacob noticed something: they weren't bidding just for his looks or health. They were bidding based on how he made them feel. Every emotion he gave off: kindness, strength. Longing was recorded and amplified by hidden sensors. It wasn't just his body they wanted, it was his soul. He took a deep breath and looked at them all. He would fake the charm, fake the emotion, and become the most desired human in the galaxy. Because the higher he climbed, the more doors would open, and once he reached the top, he'd tear the whole thing down from the inside. As the bidding reached fever pitch, Lisa leaned in and whispered, "You've made them fall in love with the idea of you, Jacob." He smiled without warmth. "Good," he said. "Now let's see how far they'll go for a lie." Bidding wars and velvet cages. Jacob was escorted to a luxury sky suite high above the alien market. It floated above clouds made of scented gas, surrounded by glass birds and floating rings of light. But no walls, no locks, no guards could hide what it really was: a gilded cage. He wasn't free, he was owned, and now the highest bidder had come to claim him. She entered with the silence of a storm before lightning. Her skin shimmered like burnished gold, her eyes like molten amber. She was taller than any other alien he had seen, with wings folded behind her back like drapes of fire. Her name was Empress Zelia of the Meraxis Empire. She didn't smile. She studied Jacob like a rare puzzle. "You are smaller than I expected," she said softly, "but you burn hotter than any I've touched." Jacob bowed slightly, just enough to play the part. "Then I hope I satisfy your investment," he said dryly. Zelia's lips curved, not quite a smile. "You will do more than that," she said. "You will make me forget I was ever empty." Jacob was dressed in silk robes that changed color with every movement. He was served fruits that sparkled and burst with warmth in his mouth. And his bed was made of living moss that adjusted to his breathing. Everything in Zelia's sky suite was perfect, except the fact that he couldn't leave. At night, she sat beside him and held his hand. She asked him to speak, not just words, but memories, feelings, heartbreaks, dreams. The more he shared, the more she trembled with need. Then came the nectar harvesting. No machines, no tubes this time. Only a single touch, her palm pressed to his chest while she whispered ancient bonding chants. The fluid his body made was taken through energy. Threads that lit up when emotions peaked, and the purer the feeling, the stronger the nectar. Zelia grew more attached by the hour. She stopped attending council meetings, skipped royal audiences. All she wanted was to sit with Jacob, to feel the warmth of his words and presence. She was addicted not just to the nectar, but to him, and Jacob saw the pattern. The more a client bonded, the more fragile they became. If the bond broke, they didn't just suffer, they shattered. But he wasn't safe either. The luxury dulled his senses. The praise softened his anger. And worst of all, the attention made him feel powerful, wanted, even needed. He had to remind himself, this was not love, it was possession, wrapped in velvet. Late one evening, while Zelia slept beside him, her fingers curled loosely around his arm. Jacob crept to the corner of the suite. A control panel blinked under. A crystal shield. He pressed his palm against it. Nothing happened. Security was too tight, even for a royal pet. Then he remembered the sad-eyed alien from the market, Thiva of the broken house. She hadn't bid, hadn't spoken. But her gaze had held meaning. Jacob believed she knew something about him. Or the trade, or maybe escape. He needed to find her again the next day. Zelia summoned a grand party in his honor. She invited other nobles to see her. Precious flame, Jacob stood in the center of the chamber, while alien guests whispered, stared, and offered congratulations. He smiled, bowed. Charmed them all, but his eyes scanned the room for Thiva. And there she was, standing in the back. Dressed in dark robes, a single glowing pendant around her neck. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Jacob saw a flicker of defiance in her look. She pressed her fingers to her pendant once, then turned and walked away. Jacob understood. She wanted him to follow. But he couldn't move. Not yet. Not with so many eyes on him that night. Zelia asked him if he was happy. Her voice was soft, like wind through warm sand. "I give you everything," she said. "Why do I feel your heart stays locked?" Jacob leaned close, touched her cheek, and whispered, "Because a heart given freely has no price." She stared at him in silence, and for the first time, her expression cracked. Not anger, not confusion, fear, because deep inside, she knew. The truth, you can't own love, no matter how much you pay for it. And Jacob knew now his weapon wasn't strength, or escape, or even rebellion. His weapon was the one thing these aliens couldn't control: human will. And with it, he would tear their empire apart from within. One broken cage at a time. The escape offer. Jacob walked through Zelia's gardens at midnight. The glowing vines curled around crystal arches, pulsing with soft light. Alien birds floated overhead, singing in deep tones. Everything was beautiful, but none of it was real. It was all a dream built to keep him asleep. But Jacob was wide awake now. He followed the path Thiva had shown with her eyes at the party. Through a tunnel beneath the waterfalls, past the servant chambers. He found a hidden gate carved into the rock, marked by a symbol that flickered like fire. As he stepped through, he found her waiting in the shadows. Thiva stood still, her face half-lit by a blue lantern. She wore a dark robe with silver threads running through it. Her eyes were tired, not from sleep, but from fighting something invisible. "You're late," she whispered, her voice dry like sand. Jacob folded his arms. "I had to charm a queen to sleep." She didn't smile. Instead, she handed him a device that looked like a cracked mirror. "This records everything the palace AI filters out," she said. "Real security logs, not the ones they show you." Jacob stared at the mirror, and what he saw made his stomach turn. Dozens of humans trapped in hidden levels beneath the main suite, hooked to machines. Drained constantly. Some didn't move anymore. Some didn't even blink. "They're called the permanents," Thiva said. "Too valuable to let walk. Too dangerous to let speak." Jacob clenched the mirror so tightly it cracked. "How long has this been happening?" "Since the first Earth trade deal," she said. 40 years ago, maybe more." Jacob shook his head. "I thought they only took volunteers." Thiva's eyes narrowed. "Did you volunteer?" Silence hung between them, heavy like smoke. Then Thiva turned and motioned for him to follow. They moved through an old maintenance tunnel filled with steam and metal pipes. It smelled like oil and something bitter. "This route leads to the outer port," she said. "There's a ship there, cloaked, small, but fast." Jacob stopped. "You planned all this?" "No," she replied, "but I've been waiting for someone like you, someone like me." She faced him, voice low and steady. "Someone they can't fully break." She led him into a quiet room where a holomap flickered above a round table. It showed a structure he hadn't seen before: the core. At the center of the Marax's empire. This station handled every Nectar transaction in the galaxy. It processed data, controlled pricing, ranked humans, and monitored behavior. It was also the only place where Nectar identity tags could be erased. "Destroy the core," she said, "and the trade collapses." Jacob rubbed his forehead. "This is bigger than I thought." Thiva nodded. "Most things that wear chains look smaller than they are." But Jacob wasn't ready. He had one condition, and it burned in his heart. "You want me to destroy their system?" he asked. "Then we save the permanents first." Thiva blinked slowly. "That'll make everything harder." "Good," Jacob said. "Hard means it matters." The plan began that night. Jacob returned to Zelia's arms with kisses and stories. And gentle lies. He pretended to fall deeper in love, and the more affection he gave, the more she trusted him. She offered him access to restricted areas, data rooms, even transport logs. Everything he needed, he now had with a smile and a soft voice. Meanwhile, Thiva gathered other Xalian workers, old rebels, and even a few brave buyers who had fallen out of favor. Together, they built a silent army, one that moved through shadows, not fire. Jacob passed encrypted messages hidden in fruit skins, sent codes, and hollowed-out books. He placed magnetic bugs behind energy mirrors and mapped out the exact route to the underground cages. The pieces were falling into place, but time was running out. Xelia began to change. Her hands trembled when he was away too long. She stopped attending royal councils and locked herself in chambers. Her need for Nectar grew dangerous. Too much bonding, too many pulls from his core. She was unraveling. Jacob saw the truth. She didn't love him. She was addicted to him, and addiction always ends in collapse. One night, as she slept beside him, whispering broken dreams, Jacob looked at her face, not with hatred, but with pity. Even the Empress was a prisoner just in a softer cell. And he was the key that would unlock everything. Tomorrow, the plan would begin. The core would tremble, the market would bleed, and the truth would rise. But tonight, he laid still in the arms of the one who thought she owned him, counting down the hours with every slow breath, and whispering a promise to himself. No one gets left behind. Breaking the chains asterisk, the alarms hadn't rung yet, but war had already started. It didn't begin with explosions or blasters. It began with silence, with soft hands placing bugs under alien thrones, with footsteps sliding through steam tunnels, with Jacob's smile hiding knives beneath words. It began with one human whispering to another, "It's time." The plan moved like a slow storm. Jacob continued to charm Xelia with affection and false peace. She gifted him a golden ring embedded with a tracker. He smiled as she slid it on his finger, then crushed the signal under his heel the moment she turned away. She thought she owned him more than ever. She had never been closer to losing him. Thiva's team infiltrated the lower rings first. The Nectar storage vaults were the heart of the operation. They didn't just contain liquid, they contained memories motional. Blueprints harvested from human men if they destroyed the vaults. No buyer would ever taste that nectar again. But Jacob had a different target first, the permanents, the ones buried under the palace like forgotten treasure. Drained, dry, and locked in sleep, Jacob used the code Xelia had given him. He walked through a hallway lined with pulsing red lights, pretending to be on his way to a relaxation chamber. 2 guards bowed to him as he passed alien women with sharp eyes but soft minds, dulled by years of dependence on Nectar, behind the chamber walls. Humans slept in cocoons, eyes closed, skin pale, heartbeat steady only because machines forced them to breathe. Jacob stepped to the first pod and placed his hand on the glass. The man inside looked just like him, young, lost, and fading. He whispered, "I'm sorry it took me this long." Thiva arrived moments later, her fingers moving fast across the control panel. "Disengaging locks," she said. "But we have 10 minutes. No more. 10 minutes to wake them." Jacob asked. "No," she said. 10 minutes before the building starts screaming." The first pod hissed open, releasing steam and light. The man inside gasped, choking on air. His eyes fluttered open, terrified and confused. Jacob knelt beside him, grabbed his shoulder. "You're safe now," he said, "but we need your legs moving." One by one, the pods opened. Men stumbled out, blinking against the light. Some collapsing, some weeping. Jacob moved from one to the next, waking, calming, lifting. He saw old faces, young boys, scarred veterans, even twins held in opposite pods. Each one was a soul pulled from a nightmare, and each one now had a second chance. But the silence broke. Sirens howled through the corridors like wounded beasts. The floor lit up in red. And metallic voices echoed above. Unauthorized access detected, Nectar stock at risk. Thiva cursed under her breath. Extraction team, now, she hissed. Into her comlink, explosions rattled the floors above them. Her rebels had begun the second phase. Fires bloomed in the Nectar vaults, breaking the feeding chains. Power surged and flickered. Lights dimmed. And gravity slipped for a second. Everything was falling apart. The guards returned, but they were slower now. Shaking, distracted, they hadn't had their Nectar in hours. And without it, their strength was fading fast. Jacob didn't need weapons. He picked up a metal rod and moved with the fury of a man who'd seen too much. One by one, he dropped them not as a soldier, but as a protector, the other rescued. Men joined him, fists and elbows flying. They didn't fight with style, they fought with purpose. And purpose was stronger than training. Thiva unlocked the emergency tunnels. They guided the group through water lines and steam shafts. Every turn they took was marked with a memory name scratched into the wall. Old blood dried into the stone. Jacob knew others had tried this before, but this time they weren't going to fail. At the outer gate, 2 security bots blocked the exit. Their eyes glowed, hands charged with stun fields. But Thiva stepped forward and held up her pendant. It blinked 3 times, then burst in a silent flash. Both bots froze, systems fried. Stolen code from an old buyer, she said. They never changed the locks. Outside, the escape ship hovered low, camouflaged against the rocky plain. Its door opened, ramp lowering, wind blasting across the sand. The first rescued humans climbed aboard, helped by rebels who grabbed their hands, lifted their tired bodies. Jacob waited at the end of the line, counting each one, 57 men. All alive, all walking, when the last one stepped in. He turned back to look at the burning sky palace behind him. It glowed red as Nectar lines burst, spraying light into the clouds. And in that chaos, a dynasty crumbled. He stepped onto the ship, the door sealing behind him. Thiva sat beside him. Silent, her face lit only by the flashing console. He didn't speak either. There was still more to do. But this chapter was finished. Jacob had broken the chains. Now he would break the system. Nectar, no more. The escape ship tore across the upper skies of Merax's prime. Behind it, fire danced through the clouds. Palaces burned. Control towers collapsed, and the Nectar vaults screamed with alarm. It wasn't just a theft, it was a declaration. Humanity would no longer be harvested inside the ship. The rescued men lay across soft mats, breathing hard, their eyes wide and trembling. Some cried silently, others laughed like madmen. Jacob moved among them with a steady hand. He offered water, comfort, a warm shoulder. But inside him, the fire hadn't cooled. Not yet. Thiva stood at the front of the ship, staring at the navigation screen. The core station is in low orbit, she said, once we reach it. The entire galaxy will feel what we've done. Jacob joined her, his voice sharp and clear. We're not just sending a message, he said. We're flipping their empire upside down as they neared the core. Merax's forces scrambled ships into the sky, but the rebellion had already begun. Across alien worlds, other humans trapped, leased and drained were rising. Thiva had sent them all a signal before they fled, and the galaxy, so used to silence from Earth's suns, was now waking to war cries. The buyers never expected the product to resist. They never imagined the Nectar would fight back. The core station hung like a dark moon over the planet. No windows, no stiles, just a giant, rotating fortress with one purpose: control. Jacob stared at it through the ship's glass shield. All that pain, he muttered, and it all flows through that thing. Thiva nodded once. It's where they store the true records, the proof, the lies, the names. Jacob tightened his fists. Then we erased their gods. Landing was impossible through the front gate. So they used the old service tunnel's forgotten shafts used for waste disposal and cargo maintenance. It stank of chemicals and rust. But no one complained. They moved fast, every footstep a beat in the rhythm of revenge. Inside the core, alarms didn't go off at first. No one thought anyone would dare break in. They reached the command chamber without resistance. Massive columns of light rose from the floor, showing holograms of humans sorted by rank and value. Each image flickered with data nectar purity, emotional stability, bonding potential. Jacob walked into the center of the room and stared at his own profile on one screen. Subject 117. Maximum bond yield. He reached out and deleted it with a swipe. Erase everything, he told Thiva. Every name, every tag, every number. She began typing fast, fingers moving like lightning across alien keys. One by one, the profiles vanished. One by one, the chains broke. But the core didn't stay quiet for long. A group of elite guards entered tall, armored, and enhanced by nectar doses. They weren't addicted, they were engineered. Jacob stood in front of the others, weaponless but firm. This ends here, he said. The guards charged forward. What they didn't expect was the fury of the rescued. The men who had been drained, beaten, and silenced were no longer weak. They had nothing left to fear. They fought back with fists, tools, torn wires, even their own bloodied chains, Thiva's. Rebels joined the brawl, and the command room turned into a thunderstorm of screams and metal. Jacob fought like fire-fast, wild, and untouchable. Every hit he landed was for someone who never made it out. Every bruise was a badge of freedom. The last guard dropped with a grunt. Her helmet cracked. Silence returned. But this time, it was not the silence of slavery. It was the silence before a new world began. Thiva finished the wipe. No records left, she said. The nectar economy just collapsed. Jacob stepped beside her and pressed the final command. A virus hidden in the system would send out a burst signal across every buying world. It showed the truth humans caged, drained, weeping, and then it showed them free, standing tall. Fists raised, flames behind them. The transmission could not be deleted. Copied or denied, it burned itself into history. As they fled the core, it began to overheat. Systems clashed. AI panicked. And the fortress swallowed itself from the inside. By the time they reached orbit, it exploded like a star of justice. Jacob didn't cheer. He closed his eyes and whispered. For every name on those screens, the ship turned toward Earth. Not for retreat, but for change. Because what Jacob had started wasn't just revenge. It was a revolution, and Nectar was no longer a symbol of control. It was proof that human hearts could never be owned, only shared when truly free. A new trade begins. The stars above Earth blinked like they were watching. Ships arrived from deep space not with weapons, but with questions. The galaxy had seen the footage, heard the screams, and felt the explosion of the core. What once was a secret trade had become the loudest truth in the universe. And Jacob Thorne stood at the center of it. He wasn't a prisoner anymore. He wasn't a product, a nectar source, or a prized pet. He was something new, a voice too strong to silence, a symbol too clear to ignore. Earth's leaders tried to deny everything at first. They blamed aliens, blamed rebels, blamed outdated programs. But the people didn't believe them, because the humans who had been taken now returned spoke for themselves. 57 freed men told their stories, and then thousands more across the stars joined in. It became a wave that no wall could stop. Jacob refused money, refused politics. He didn't want power. He wanted balance. So he created something new, the Human Accord, a council built by survivors, healers, and honest traders. They didn't sell nectar. They offered connection. Aliens who wished to bond with humans had to earn it through respect, understanding, and choice. It wasn't easy. Some aliens protested, furious that their supply had vanished. But others, especially the younger ones, supported the change. They were tired of faking love and buying affection. They wanted something deeper, something real. For the first time, humans and aliens sat across tables as equals and talked. Without collars around necks, Zelia, the empress who once owned Jacob, went silent after the core collapse. Her empire lost billions. Her name was dragged through starlight networks, but one day, Sure sent a single message to Earth, no demands. No anger, just a question. Did you ever feel anything for me? Jacob read it once, then deleted it because the truth didn't belong to her anymore. It belonged to him, and to every human who had once been caged. Thiva became co-leader of the Accord. Her knowledge of alien systems made her a force of nature. She never smiled much, but she stayed close to Jacob, not as a handler or rebel, but as a friend. One who had walked through fire beside him and never let go. Soon, new stations were built not for harvesting, but for healing. Human volunteers trained in emotional balance. Alien visitors studied human culture. Together, they built bridges. That didn't bleed anyone dry. The nectar still flowed, but now it came with music, laughter, consent, and when bonds formed, they weren't chains, they were choices. Jacob sat one evening beneath the stars in a quiet garden near the Accords. Main Tower. He watched two children, one human, one alien, chasing light bugs together. He heard no pain in their voices, no lies in their eyes, just joy, and it filled him like no nectar ever could. A young journalist approached him, trembling with a recorder. "In hand, Mr. Thorne," she said, "people call you the flame that melted the trade." Jacob looked at her and shook his head. "I didn't melt anything," he said. "I just refused to burn for them." She asked one more question before leaving. What should the galaxy remember about all this? Jacob turned toward the night sky and answered slowly. "That humans may be soft," he said, "but our spirit is not for sale." As the stars twinkled above and peace finally bloomed below, one message echoed across the universe, carved into stations, monuments, and the hearts of 1,000 worlds. Freedom is the purest nectar of all, and this time everyone drank it willingly.